The morning sun of Xylaris Prime cast long shadows across the sprawling military academy complex. 3 of the planet's 4 moons still hung in the lavender sky, their gravitational pull creating the perfect conditions for the zero-G training towers that pierced the atmosphere like crystalline needles. Below, the holographic combat arenas shimmered with residual energy from the previous night's exercises, while the survival domes dotted the landscape like enormous blisters of reinforced transparent steel. Kai Moreno stood at the observation deck of Barracks 7, watching alien cadets from a dozen different species navigate the morning obstacle course with varying degrees of success. At 17, he was among the youngest students at the academy, and certainly the most underestimated. His dark hair was regulation short, his frame lean but wiry, with the kind of muscle that came from years of hard labor rather than genetic enhancement or specialized training programs. The galaxy had long ago reached its verdict on humanity. In the grand hierarchy of interstellar species, humans occupied a peculiar niche somewhere between diplomatically useful and militarily negligible. They were clever enough to have achieved faster-than-light travel independently, which earned them a seat at the Galactic Council, but their physical limitations were legendary. No exoskeleton like the Vectool, no triple-redundant muscle fibers like the Sulari, no adaptive camouflage, no natural weapons, no enhanced sensory organs, just soft skin, breakable bones, and an annoying tendency to ask why when given orders. Watching won't make you any stronger. Human. A gravelly voice rumbled behind him. Kai didn't turn around. He recognized the voice of Thurok, a Sulari cadet from the 3rd-year class. The reflection in the transparent tail showed the alien's imposing form, nearly 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating that shifted from deep purple to black depending on the light. 4 arms, each thick as Kai's torso, crossed over a chest that could deflect small arms fire without flinching. Observation is the first step to understanding, Kai replied evenly. Something your people might benefit from trying occasionally. Thurok's laugh was like grinding stone. Understanding won't help when someone like me is crushing your windpipe. No, Kai agreed, finally turning to face the larger cadet. But understanding that your species' laryngeal nerve runs external to your throat plating, right here. He gestured to a spot just below where a human's jaw would be. That might help quite a bit. The Sulari's expression shifted, all 4 eyes narrowing. Before he could respond, a sharp whistle echoed through the barracks. Morning assembly. Thurok growled something in his native language and lumbered away, leaving Kai alone with his thoughts. The assembly hall could accommodate 5,000 cadets comfortably, though comfortable was relative when you had species ranging from the diminutive Kalari, who stood barely 3 feet tall, to the massive Gorvani, whose serpentine bodies required specialized seating arrangements. Kai found his designated spot among the human contingent, all 12 of them. They were, as always, relegated to the back corner, more observers than participants in the Academy's grand tradition. Lieutenant Arzu took the podium, his Sulari features even more imposing than Thurok's. Unlike the cadet, Arzu bore the scars of real combat, a melted section of facial plating from a plasma burn, one secondary arm ending in a cybernetic replacement, and eyes that had seen too many battlefields to count. Cadets! His voice boomed without amplification, a natural gift of Sulari physiology. Today marks the beginning of your 3rd quarter evaluations. As you know, these assessments determine not only your individual rankings, but your species allocation of positions in next year's recruitment cycle. A ripple of anticipation ran through the crowd. The recruitment allocations were more than just numbers. They were a statement of each species' military worth in the eyes of the Academy. For established warrior races like the Sulari or the Vectool, it was a matter of maintaining dominance. For humans, it was about survival. Their current allocation of 15 slots galaxy-wide was barely enough to maintain a token presence. This morning's exercise will test your fundamental combat capabilities. Arzu continued. Mixed species squads will engage in unarmed combat scenarios against holographic opponents calibrated to exploit your weaknesses. You will have no weapons, no armor, no technological aids beyond basic protective gear. Only your natural abilities and whatever skills you've managed to acquire. Kai felt his fellow humans shift uncomfortably. Natural abilities. The phrase was practically designed to remind them of their inadequacy. Squad assignments are being transmitted to your neural interfaces now, Arzu said. Report to Combat Arena 3 in 20 minutes. Dismissed. The humans didn't have neural interfaces, another biological incompatibility, so they relied on handheld devices for their assignments. Kai checked his and felt his stomach tighten. Squad 7, himself. 2 Sulari cadets, a Vectool, and a wreck. It was either a cruel joke or a test. Probably both. Tough draw, said a voice beside him. Kai looked over to see Sarah Okafor, one of the few humans who'd made it to the 3rd year. Her dark skin bore a patchwork of scars from training accidents that would have killed most humans. Squad 7 has Vorak and Zeth. They've been looking for an excuse to hurt a human all semester. I know, Kai said quietly. I've been watching them. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Watching won't help when they're crushing my windpipe, Kai finished. So I've been told. He excused himself and headed not for the arena, but for his quarters. There was something he needed to retrieve. The device looked innocuous enough, a pair of standard training gloves with haptic feedback systems designed to record combat movements for later analysis. Every cadet had them. What made Kai's special were the modifications he'd spent the last 6 months implementing in secret, borrowing principles from his father's mining equipment. He'd enhanced the sensors to detect and record not just movement, but the bioelectric signatures that preceded muscle activation. In theory, it would give him a fraction of a second's warning before each strike. In practice, he'd only tested it against training dummies and his own shadow. His hands shook slightly as he pulled on the gloves. His father would have called this cheating. Then again, his father had died believing in fair fights. Gunned down by raiders while defending a mining outpost that the military deemed strategically insignificant. The funeral had been attended by 6 people. The raiders probably hadn't even remembered his name. You're late. Dr. Ella Ferris stood in his doorway, her expression unreadable. Unlike the combat instructors, she wore civilian clothes, a simple gray suit that somehow made her look more dangerous than any amount of body armor. As the human contingent's advocate and theoretical combat instructor, she occupied a strange position in the academy hierarchy. The assembly just ended 10 minutes ago, Kai pointed out. And you came here instead of heading directly to the arena. Why? Kai held up his gloved hands. Equipment check. Dr. Ferris stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. She was a small woman, even by human standards, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Those aren't standard issue. The modifications are personal initiative. Show me. Kai hesitated, then activated the enhancement. A subtle blue glow emanated from the sensor nodes he'd embedded in the fabric. Dr. Ferris watched for a moment, then pulled out a scanner and ran it over the gloves. Impressive, she said finally. Mining sensor technology adapted for bioelectric detection. Your father's design? Based on it, he used similar sensors to detect unstable rock formations before they shifted. I figured biological systems might have similar precursor signals. They do. Dr. Ferris pocketed her scanner. The Mentari have been using similar technology for centuries. Of course, they have the advantage of natural electromagnetic sensitivity. You'll be processing this through visual indicators? Haptic feedback. Actually, the gloves will create pressure points to indicate incoming strikes. Clever. She paused at the door. You know Arzu will have you expelled if he discovers this. Only if he finds out. When? Dr. Ferris corrected. When he finds out. The Sulari have many qualities, but subtlety isn't among them. He'll review every second of combat footage, looking for advantages to press. She studied him with those cataloging eyes. Why risk it? Kai thought of his father, of the 6 people at his funeral, of humanity's 15 recruitment slots in a galaxy of billions. Because playing by their rules means we'll always lose, and I'm tired of losing. Dr. Ferris nodded slowly. Then you'd better win convincingly. Half measures will only make things worse. She left without another word, and Kai made his way to the arena. Combat Arena 3 was considered mid-tier by Academy standards. Large enough for complex scenarios, but small enough that spectators could follow the action without enhancement. As Kai entered through the competitor's tunnel, he could already hear the crowd gathering above. Word traveled fast in the Academy, and a mixed-species squad with a human member was apparently worth watching. His squad mates were already assembled in the preparation circle. The 2 Sulari, Vorak and Zeth, as Sarah had warned, stood together, their body language radiating contempt. The Vec Tool, who Kai recognized as Lin Ma from his theoretical tactics class, perched on one of the equipment racks, compound eyes taking in everything at once. The Rec Cadet was someone Kai didn't know. Their silicon-based form currently configured for bipedal movement but capable of shifting to accommodate different combat needs. The human arrives, Vorak announced, his primary arms crossed while his secondary ones gestured dismissively. Try not to die too quickly. It would reflect poorly on the squad. I'll do my best, Kai replied mildly, running through his mental catalogue of Sulari pressure points. The species' redundant nervous system made them difficult to disable, but not impossible. The key was hitting multiple nodes simultaneously, overloading their neural processors before they could adapt. Cadets, attention! The arena's AI system activated, projecting a holographic instructor above them. Squad 7, you will face escalating waves of holographic opponents. Your objective is simple. Disable all targets using only hand-to-hand combat techniques. Lethal force is authorized against holograms. Squad performance will be judged on speed, efficiency, and tactical coordination. What coordination? Zeth muttered. We have a human. Lin Ma chittered, the Vec Tool equivalent of clearing their throat. Perhaps we should discuss strategy. Strategy is simple. Vorak interrupted. We fight. The human tries not to get in the way. The Rec adapts as needed. You do whatever it is Vec Tool do. We think, Lin Ma replied, mandibles clicking with irritation. Something you might try occasionally. Kai remained silent, studying the arena layout. The floor was composed of adaptive panels that could shift to create obstacles or alter terrain. Environmental projectors lined the walls, capable of simulating everything from zero gravity to crushing pressure. He'd fought in similar arenas before, but never as part of a mixed squad, and never with stakes this high. Simulation beginning in 30 seconds, the AI announced. Prepare yourselves. Kai activated his glove's enhancement system, feeling the subtle pressure of the haptic feedback against his palms. The bioelectric sensors would need a moment to calibrate to each opponent, but once they did... Stay behind us, human, Zeth said, moving to flank Vorak. We'll handle the real fighting. The arena floor began to shift, panels rising to create a maze-like environment. Holographic markers appeared at various points, target locations. The lighting dimmed to combat levels, casting everything in a bluish twilight that favored species with enhanced vision. Kai adjusted his stance. Years of training in his colony's mining tunnels having taught him to fight in poor visibility. Wave 1 commencing, the AI announced. The first opponents materialized 20 meters away, a squad of holographic Kalari soldiers, chosen for their speed and agility. In real combat, Kalari were notorious for their hit-and-run tactics, using their natural velocity to strike and retreat before enemies could respond. As holograms, They were programmed with all the same movement patterns and combat techniques as their living counterparts. Vorak and Szeth charged immediately, relying on their natural armor to absorb the Kalari's strikes while closing distance. It was typical Solari tactics, straightforward and brutal. The wreck began shifting their form, extending additional limbs to create a wider defensive perimeter. Lin-Ma hung back, compound eyes tracking movement patterns. Kai moved, not toward the enemy, but laterally, using the raised panels as cover while his gloves calibrated to the Kalari bioelectric signatures. The holograms might be artificial, but they were designed to perfectly mimic their source species, including neural patterns. Within seconds, he felt the first haptic pulse, incoming strike from his left, high angle. Targeting what would be a human's temple, he ducked, pivoted, and struck out with a palm strike that should have connected with empty air. Instead, it caught a Kalari hologram mid-leap, the precise point where their momentum was committed but their body was still vulnerable. The hologram flickered and dissipated. Lucky shot. Vorak grunted, grappling with two Kalari at once. Kai didn't respond. The haptic feedback was building now, creating a predictive map of the battlefield. He could feel the bioelectric surge of muscle activation fractionally before each movement. It wasn't enough to make him superhuman, but it leveled the playing field just enough. A Kalari came at him from behind, or tried to. Kai was already spinning, using their momentum against them. His elbow found the precise point where a Kalari's flexible spine was momentarily rigid during attack postures. Another flicker, another dissipation. "Wave 1 complete," the AI announced. "Wave 2 commencing in 10 seconds. "Not bad. Human," Lin-Ma chittered, having taken down one Kalari with a precisely calculated strike to their neural cluster. "You fight like you've studied them." "I have," Kai admitted, catching his breath. The gloves were working better than he'd hoped, but the processing load was significant. He could already feel a headache building from trying to interpret the haptic patterns in real time. The second wave materialized. Gorvani warriors, their serpentine bodies immediately coiling into attack positions. Where the Kalari relied on speed, the Gorvani used constriction and overwhelming force. Their scales could deflect most strikes, and their decentralized nervous system made them incredibly difficult to disable. "Spread out," Lin-Ma called, recognizing the threat. "Don't let them use their coils." For once, Vorak listened. The squad dispersed, forcing the Gorvani to choose individual targets rather than attempting group constriction. Kai found himself facing a Gorvani warrior nearly twice his height, its body swaying hypnotically as it approached. The haptic feedback was screaming warnings, bioelectric surges throughout the creature's length. No single point of initiation. Gorvani didn't telegraph their attacks because their entire body was the weapon. But there had to be a pattern, a moment of commitment. There, a subtle shift in the bioelectric field, a redistribution of neural activity toward the upper body. The Gorvani was about to strike high while using its tail for a sweep. Kai dropped low, but instead of trying to avoid both attacks, he moved into them. His hands found the point where the Gorvani's scales overlapped near what would be its solar plexus in a humanoid, a tiny gap, barely a centimeter wide. He drove his fingers into the gap with surgical precision, disrupting the neural bundle beneath. The Gorvani hologram spasmed and dissipated. "How did you—" Szeth's question was cut off as a Gorvani caught him in its coils. The Solari's armor plating groaned under the pressure. Kai didn't hesitate. The gloves were already calibrated to Gorvani patterns. He sprinted toward Szeth, reading the constriction pattern in the bioelectric field. There, the point where the Gorvani had to maintain specific muscle tension to keep the coils tight. He struck 3 times in rapid succession, each blow landing on a critical pressure point. The Gorvani released Szeth and turned on Kai, but Lin-Ma was already there, having calculated the perfect angle of attack. Together, they brought down the hologram. "Wave 2 complete," Wave 3 commencing in 10 seconds. Kai's hands were shaking. The gloves were hot against his skin. The processors struggling to keep up with the data flow. He'd pushed them beyond their design parameters, and he wasn't sure how much longer they'd hold up. "You saved me," Zeth said, disbelief clear in his voice. "A human saved a Solari in combat." "We're squad mates," Kai replied simply. "That's what squad mates do." The final wave appeared, and Kai's heart sank. Genetically enhanced gluon mite brawlers, 3 of them. Each stood 9 feet tall, their bodies a patchwork of biological enhancements and grafted weapon systems. In real combat, they were typically deployed as shock troops, capable of tearing through conventional forces with minimal effort. "Form up," Vorak commanded, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by genuine concern. "These things will tear us apart if we stay scattered." But Kai was thinking of his father, of the mining techniques passed down through generations of colonists. Gluon mites, despite their enhancements, were still fundamentally silicon-based life forms, and his father had taught him that silicon, no matter how it was arranged, had structural weaknesses. "I need 30 seconds, he told the squad. "Can you give me that?" Linmar's compound eyes fixed on him. "What are you planning?" "Trust me." It was an impossible request. They'd known each other for all of 20 minutes, had no reason to believe a human could contribute meaningfully against enhanced opponents. But something in Kai's voice, or perhaps the fact that he'd already saved Zeth, made Linmar nod. "You heard him," the Vectool announced. 30 seconds, defensive positions." The squad moved as one, creating a barrier between Kai and the advancing brawlers. Vorak and Zeth stood shoulder to shoulder, their combined mass creating an impressive wall. Linmar darted between them, using Vectool agility to strike at joints and sensory organs. The wreck flowed like liquid stone, adapting their form to plug gaps in the defense. Kai knelt, placing his palms flat on the arena floor. The haptic feedback systems in his gloves weren't designed for this, but the principles were the same. Bioelectric fields, structural resonance, finding the frequency that would cause cascade failure. A brawler broke through, backhanding Zeth with enough force to send the Solari flying. It turned toward Kai, raising a massive fist augmented with bone spurs and metallic implants. The gloves found the frequency. Kai rolled aside as the fist came down, striking the floor where he'd been kneeling. But his palms were still in contact with the arena surface, and he pulsed every bit of power the gloves could generate into that specific harmonic frequency. The effect was instantaneous. The gluon mite's silicon-based structure began to resonate, its own density working against it. Microfractures appeared along its limbs, spreading like a virus through its body. It took one more step before collapsing into a pile of dissipating photons. "The floor!" Kai shouted. "Get them to strike the floor!" Understanding dawned on Linmar first. The Vectool began a complex dance, baiting the remaining brawlers into slamming their fists into the arena panels. Each impact sent vibrations through the surface, vibrations that Kai amplified and redirected through his gloves. It was his father's technique for breaking apart asteroids. Find the resonance frequency, apply it at the right points, and let physics do the rest. The second brawler fell, then the third, their enhanced bodies unable to compensate for the structural failure at the molecular level. "Exercise complete," the AI announced. "Squad 7, mission accomplished. Time, 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Efficiency rating, exceptional." Kai collapsed onto his back. Pulling off the smoking gloves, the haptic processors had burned out completely, leaving angry red marks on his palms. Worth it, he thought, watching his squad mates process what had just happened. "That was impossible," Vorak said slowly. "Humans don't fight like that." "No," Kai agreed, sitting up with effort. "We don't fight like Solari or Vectool or any other species. We fight like humans. We observe, We adapt, and we find solutions you don't expect. The arena's spectator shields deactivated, revealing a crowd of several thousand cadets. The noise was deafening. Surprise, disbelief, and no small amount of anger from those who'd bet against the human-inclusive squad. But Kai's attention was drawn to the observation box where Lieutenant Arzu stood, his expression unreadable. "Cadet Moreno," the lieutenant's voice cut through the noise. "Report to my office immediately. Bring your equipment." The long walk from the arena to the administrative section gave Kai time to think. He'd won, but at what cost? If Arzu had detected the glove modifications, expulsion was the best-case scenario. Worse, it might affect humanity's standing at the academy even further. He found Dr. Ferris waiting outside Arzu's office, her expression carefully neutral. "He knows," she said simply. "How much?" "Everything. The Sulari have many qualities, remember? They're also more perceptive than most give them credit for." She paused. "He's not alone in there." Before Kai could ask what she meant, the office door opened. Lieutenant Arzu stood there, his scarred features giving away nothing. "Enter." The office was Spartan by any standard. A desk, 2 chairs, and walls covered in tactical displays showing various combat scenarios. But Kai's attention was immediately drawn to the figure standing by the window. Commandant Thalvar, the Academy's highest-ranking officer. The ancient Mentari's crystalline form refracted the light in prismatic patterns, their psychic presence a tangible weight in the room. "Cadet Moreno," Thalvar's voice resonated directly in Kai's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "Show me your hands." Kai extended his palms, the burn marks clearly visible. Thalvar floated closer, electromagnetic fields probing the damaged skin. "Interesting," the Commandant mused. "You adapted mining resonance technology for combat applications. Crude but effective. Your father's influence?" "Yes, sir." "He died in the Kepler station raid, did he not? The one our forces deemed strategically insignificant?" Kai's jaw tightened. "Yes, sir." "You blame us for his death." It wasn't a question. Mentari could read surface thoughts as easily as most species read facial expressions. Kai saw no point in denying it. "Yes, sir. Not for the raid itself, but for the designation. He died thinking his sacrifice meant nothing to anyone beyond our colony." Thalvar was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Lieutenant Arzu believes you should be expelled for using unauthorized equipment modifications. What do you think?" "I think," Kai said carefully, "that every species in this academy uses their natural advantages. Sulari have armor and strength. Vektul have compound eyes and swarm coordination. Mentari have psychic abilities. Humans have innovation and adaptability. I simply used our advantages in a way you didn't expect." "He has a point," Dr. Ferris interjected. "The rules state no external weapons or armor. They say nothing about modifying approved equipment." Arzu's scarred features twisted into what might have been amusement. "You would make a good legal advocate, doctor. But the spirit of the rule..." "The spirit of the rule," Thalvar interrupted, "is to test each species' combat capabilities. Today, we saw something unprecedented. A human cadet not only survived combat against superior opponents, but led his squad to an exceptional rating. More importantly, he earned the respect of his squad mates through action rather than words." The Commandant turned to Kai. "You will not be expelled. However, your modifications will be confiscated and studied. If you wish to continue using enhanced equipment, you will work with our technical division to develop something that meets safety standards. Dr. Ferris will oversee this project." "Additionally," Arzu added, his tone suggesting this wasn't entirely his idea, "you will assist in developing new combat doctrines that incorporate human adaptive thinking. Your squad mates from today's exercise have already volunteered to participate." Kai blinked in surprise. "They have?" Lin Ma was quite insistent, Arzu said dryly. Something about finally finding a combat partner who thinks before acting. And Zeth, well, Sulari honor demands he repay the life debt he now owes you. There is no life debt. They were holograms. The debt stands. Arzu cut him off. You acted to save a squad mate. Regardless of the actual danger, that matters. Thalvar moved toward the door, pausing beside Kai. Your father's sacrifice was not insignificant. Cadet Moreno, every life lost in defense of others has meaning, whether recognized by military bureaucracy or not. Perhaps it's time we remembered that. The Mentari departed, leaving Kai alone with Arzu and Dr. Ferris. The lieutenant studied him for a long moment, then pulled up a holographic display. The recruitment allocations for next year are still being determined, he said. Based on today's performance, I'm recommending an increase in human positions from 15 to 30. It's not much, but it's double. Kai interrupted, his throat tight. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. Those additional 15 cadets will be held to the standard you set today. If they fail, Arzu let the threat hang in the air. Dismissed, cadet. Report to medical for those burns, then get some rest. Tomorrow, you begin teaching your squad mates how to think like humans. Kai saluted and left. Dr. Ferris falling into step beside him as they walked through the academy's corridors. Word had already spread about the combat exercise, and Kai found himself on the receiving end of stares ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. A few humans nodded as he passed, hope flickering in their eyes for the first time since arriving at the academy. You've started something, Dr. Ferris observed. Are you prepared for the consequences? Kai thought of his father, of the 6 people at his funeral, of humanity's struggle to find its place among the stars. We can't keep playing by their rules and expecting different results. Maybe it's time to show them what human warfare really looks like. And what does it look like? Adaptive, unconventional, finding strength in what others call weakness. He paused outside the medical bay. My father used to say that humans were the only species that could look at an impossible situation and ask, what if? Maybe that's our real advantage. Dr. Ferris smiled, the expression transforming her usually stern features. Then let's see how many impossible situations we can turn possible. Report to Laboratory 7 tomorrow after your squad training. We have equipment to design. As she walked away, Kai entered the medical bay to find Lin Ma already there, having one of their secondary arms treated for a hairline fracture. Kai Moreno. The Vectool chittered in greeting. I have been researching human combat philosophy. Your Sun Tzu wrote, all warfare is based on deception. Is this what you demonstrated today? Part of it, Kai admitted, sitting on an adjacent bed as a medical drone began treating his burns. But it's more than that. It's about understanding that strength isn't always physical. Sometimes it's knowing when to strike, where to strike, and how to turn your opponent's advantages against them. Fascinating. My people have always believed in numerical superiority and coordinated assault. But your approach suggests that a single individual, properly prepared, can alter the entire battlefield dynamic. Lin Ma's compound eyes whirred as they refocused. I would like to learn more. So would I, rumbled a voice from the doorway. Zeth entered, one of his secondary arms in a sling but otherwise intact. Behind him, Vorak loomed, looking somewhat sheepish for a Sulari. You saved my life today, Zeth said without preamble. Hologram or not, I was caught, helpless. No Sulari has ever owed such a debt to a human. You don't owe me anything, Kai insisted. We're squad mates, or we were, for the exercise. Were? Vorak stepped forward. Did you not hear? We volunteered to continue working with you, the 4 of us. Plus, whoever else is brave enough to join a human's combat doctrine class. His mandibles twitched in what Kai was learning to recognize as Sulari amusement. Though after today, I suspect you'll have more volunteers than you can handle." "Why?" Kai asked, genuinely puzzled. "This morning you thought humans were worthless in combat." "This morning, I was an idiot," Vorak said bluntly. "You fought with honor, intelligence, and courage. You saved a squad mate who had shown you nothing but contempt, and you defeated opponents that should have crushed you without effort. If that is human warfare, then I want to learn it." "As do I," the wreck cadet added, flowing into the medical bay in their liquid form before solidifying into a vaguely humanoid shape. "I am Flux. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I was processing what I witnessed." "No need to apologize," Kai said, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in dynamics. This morning he'd been just another overlooked human cadet. Now he had a squad of alien warriors wanting to learn from him. The medical drone finished with his hands, the burns already fading under its ministrations. As Kai flexed his fingers, testing the repairs, he noticed something that made him smile. The burn pattern, while healing, had left faint marks that looked almost like circuit paths on his palms. "What amuses you?" Linmar asked. "Just thinking," Kai said, "that sometimes the best innovations leave a mark." "Indeed," Linmar agreed. "Though I hope future innovations will be less physically damaging. Dr. Ferris mentioned you'll be developing new equipment." "Apparently. Want to help? I could use someone who understands both tactics and technology." "It would be my honor." Linmar's mandibles clicked in excitement. "Perhaps we could also investigate adapting Vectool's swarm coordination principles for mixed species units. If today proved anything, it's that diversity of approach can be a significant combat multiplier." The conversation continued as the group made their way to the mess hall, drawing stares and whispers from other cadets. By the time they sat down, their table had become a gathering point for the curious and the ambitious. Sarah Okafor was among the first to join them, followed by several other human cadets and a surprising number of aliens. "So," Sarah said, sliding her tray next to Kai's, "I heard you broke the arena record for fastest completion with a mixed-species squad, and that Commandant Thalvar personally intervened to keep you from being expelled, and that you somehow figured out how to take down enhanced gluon mites with your bare hands. Busy morning?" "Something like that," Kai admitted. Though the gluon mite thing was mostly applied mining physics. "Applied mining physics," Sarah repeated, shaking her head. 6 months ago, you could barely keep up in basic combat drills. What changed?" Kai thought about it, absently rubbing the fading marks on his palms. "I stopped trying to fight like them and started fighting like us. Like humans. We're never going to match other species physically, so why pretend otherwise? But we have something they don't. Which is? The ability to look at any situation, no matter how impossible, and find a solution no one else would think of. My father called it asteroid thinking. When you're mining in space, you can't just blast through problems. You have to work with what you have, understand the environment, and find the weak points that nature already put there." "Your father sounds wise," Flux observed, their forms shifting slightly to better accommodate the bench. "He was," Kai said quietly. "He died believing humans would never be respected as warriors. Today I think I proved him wrong." "You proved us all wrong," Zeth corrected. "And tomorrow, you'll teach us how to do the same." The meal continued with discussions of tactics, technology, and the integration of human thinking into traditional combat doctrines. By the time they finished, Kai had a list of 30 cadets, human and alien alike, who wanted to participate in the new training program. As the group dispersed for afternoon classes, Linmar lingered behind with Kai. "There's something you should know," the Vectool said quietly. The exercise today was observed by more than just Academy staff. Representatives from several military commands were present, including some who have been advocating for humanity's removal from combat positions entirely. And? And your performance has forced them to reconsider. But it's also made you a target. There are those who see human innovation as a threat to the established order. Be careful. Kai Moreno, today's victory may have consequences you haven't anticipated. Kai nodded, unsurprised. Change always comes with resistance, but we can't let fear of consequences keep us from moving forward. Spoken like a true warrior, Linmar chittered approvingly. Though perhaps one with more wisdom than years. I look forward to our collaboration. As the Vectool departed, Kai made his way to his next class, Theoretical Xenobiology. The professor, a Kalari whose species Kai had so effectively countered in the arena, gave him a long look before beginning the lecture. But there was something different in that look now. Not dismissal or contempt, but a wary respect. The class itself took on new meaning as Kai listened to descriptions of various species' biological systems. Each fact was a potential advantage, each weakness a possible exploitation point. He found himself taking notes not just for the exam, but for future combat applications. Cadet Moreno, the professor called as class ended. A moment. Kai approached the desk where Professor Thylix waited. Her feathers rustling in what he'd learned was a sign of agitation in Kalari. Your performance today was instructive, she said carefully. You exploited knowledge of Kalari physiology with remarkable precision. I meant no disrespect to your species, Professor. It was simply tactical application of available information. No disrespect taken. In fact, I'm impressed. Most students memorize facts for tests, then promptly forget them. You clearly see the practical applications. She paused, seeming to wrestle with a decision. I have a proposition. Work with me on a xenobiology combat manual, a comprehensive guide to each species' biological advantages and vulnerabilities from a tactical perspective. It could revolutionize how we approach interspecies combat training. I'd be honored, Professor. Though I suspect some species won't be happy about their weaknesses being catalogued. Then they should work to eliminate those weaknesses, shouldn't they? Thylix's beak curved in what might have been a smile. Besides, understanding vulnerabilities works both ways. Know your enemy, but also know yourself. Another human philosopher, I believe? Sun Tzu again. Kai confirmed. He had a lot of useful insights. Then perhaps it's time the rest of the galaxy learned them. Report to my office tomorrow evening. We'll begin with the species you faced today. Kai's day continued in similar fashion. In each class, professors and students alike viewed him differently. Some with respect, others with suspicion, but none with the casual dismissal that had been humanity's lot just hours before. By the time he reached his quarters that evening, exhaustion weighed on him like increased gravity. But there was one more task to complete. Kai sat at his small desk and activated his personal communication terminal. The quantum entanglement relay would ensure his message reached Earth instantly, despite the vast distances involved. "Mom," he began, then paused, unsure how to continue. How did you explain that in a single morning you'd potentially changed humanity's military future? I know it's been a while since I wrote. The Academy has been challenging, but something happened today that I think Dad would have been proud of. He told her everything. The exercise, the modified gloves, the squad's acceptance, Commandant Thalvar's intervention. As he wrote, he could almost hear his father's voice. Gruff but warm. Show them what humans are made of. Son, not muscle and armor, but heart and mind. The recruitment allocation might double next year. He continued. 30 humans instead of 15. It's not much compared to the hundreds other species get. But it's a start. And they want me to teach, to show others how to think like humans in combat. I'm scared I'll let them down. That I'll prove this was just a fluke, but I'm more scared of not trying. He signed off with love and transmitted the message, then lay back on his narrow bunk. Through the transparisteel window, he could see the 3 moons of Xylaris Prime rising, their combined light casting silver shadows across his room. Somewhere among the stars, Earth spun on, unaware that one of its children had taken the first step toward earning humanity's place among the galaxy's warriors. A soft chime announced a visitor. Kai opened the door to find Linmar, Zeth, Vorak, and Flux waiting in the corridor. "We've been discussing tomorrow's training session," Linmar announced. "And we've realized we know very little about human combat philosophy beyond what you demonstrated today. So we brought study materials," Flux added, producing a datapad. "Everything we could find on human military history, tactics, and theory. We thought perhaps you could guide us through it." Kai looked at his former squad mates, aliens who just this morning had dismissed him as weak and worthless, now standing in his doorway asking to learn. It was surreal and humbling and terrifying all at once. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. "Though I should warn you, human military history isn't always pretty. We've had a lot of practice fighting each other before we reached the stars." "All species have," Vorak observed, squeezing his bulk through the doorway. "But humans seem to have elevated it to an art form. This guerrilla warfare concept, for instance, fighting a stronger enemy through harassment and attrition rather than direct confrontation. No Solari would have conceived of such a thing. Because Solari value honor and direct combat," Kai noted, clearing space for everyone to sit. "Which is admirable, but also predictable. Human warfare often relies on being unpredictable. Like your resonance attack on the gluon mites," Zeth said. "No one has ever thought to use environmental harmonics as a weapon." "Because most species don't need to," Kai pointed out. "When you can punch through steel with your bare hands, why look for alternatives? Humans had to get creative because we didn't have other options." The impromptu study session lasted well into the night cycle. They reviewed human conflicts from ancient times through the colonial wars, analyzing tactics that had allowed numerically or technologically inferior forces to triumph. Kai found himself explaining concepts that he'd taken for granted: ambush tactics, psychological warfare, the importance of logistics and intelligence gathering. "This hearts and minds doctrine," Linmar said, reviewing notes on human counterinsurgency. "You fight not just to defeat the enemy, but to win the support of the population. Fascinating. Vectool warfare has always been about overwhelming force and establishing dominance. Sometimes the strongest victory is the one where you don't have to fight at all." Kai quoted another human philosopher, though I can't remember which one. "Your species has produced many warrior philosophers," Flux observed. "Perhaps that's the key difference. Other species separate warfare and wisdom. Humans seem to blend them. Maybe because we had to," Kai suggested. "When you're the underdog in most fights, you need every advantage you can get. That includes thinking about why you're fighting, not just how." "Speaking of advantages," Vorak interjected, "what exactly did those gloves do? I've reviewed the footage a dozen times and still can't understand how you anticipated our opponent's moves." Kai hesitated, then decided on honesty. These beings had chosen to trust him. He owed them the same courtesy. He explained the bioelectric detection system, how it provided fractional warnings of muscle activation, and how he'd adapted it from mining equipment. "Brilliant," Linmar breathed. "You took industrial technology and weaponized it. This is what you mean by human innovation, seeing connections others miss." "It nearly got me expelled," Kai reminded them. "But it didn't," Zeth countered. "Because even Commandant Thalvar recognized the validity of your approach. You used the tools available to overcome a biological disadvantage. That's not cheating, that's evolution." "Accelerated evolution," Flux corrected. "Natural selection might take millions of years to develop such capabilities. Humans do it in a single generation through technology." "Which raises an interesting question," Vorak mused. If humans can augment themselves to match other species' capabilities, what happens when you start from an equal position? What could human innovation achieve if you weren't always playing catch-up? It was a question that haunted Kai long after his study group departed. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he thought about humanity's future among the stars. Today had been a victory, but a small one. 30 recruitment slots instead of 15. One successful combat exercise, a handful of alien allies. But it was a beginning. The next morning came too soon, announced by the harsh buzz of his alarm. Kai dragged himself from bed, muscles sore from yesterday's exertions and mind foggy from too little sleep. But as he donned his training uniform, he felt a spark of anticipation. Today, he would begin teaching others what he'd learned. Today, humanity's approach to warfare would start spreading through the academy. The training hall Dr. Ferris had secured was smaller than the main combat arenas, but well-equipped. Holographic projectors, adaptive floor panels, and a full suite of monitoring equipment would allow them to experiment safely. Kai arrived early to find Dr. Ferris already there, accompanied by a team of technicians. "Good morning, Cadet Moreno," she greeted him. "I trust you're ready for this?" "As ready as someone can be for teaching combat philosophy to alien warriors," Kai replied. "Any advice? Remember that you're not trying to make them human. You're trying to show them how human thinking can enhance their existing capabilities. Integration, not replacement." Sound advice, Kai thought. As the first students began arriving, his squad mates from yesterday were among the first, but they were quickly followed by others. The 30 volunteers he'd expected had somehow grown to nearly 50, representing a dozen different species. "Attention," Kai called, surprised when the room immediately fell silent. Right, he'd earned their respect yesterday. Now he had to keep it. "I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. What I demonstrated yesterday was one application of human tactical thinking. What we're going to explore together is how that thinking can work with your species' natural advantages." He activated the holographic display, showing footage from yesterday's exercise. "Let's start with what happened and why it worked." The session was unlike any combat class taught at the academy. Instead of drilling specific moves or formations, Kai encouraged discussion and experimentation. When a Gorvani cadet mentioned difficulty with opponents who stayed outside constriction range, the group brainstormed solutions. Lin Ma suggested using environmental features to limit escape routes. A human cadet proposed feinting vulnerability to draw enemies closer. Flux demonstrated how shapeshifting could create the illusion of a smaller threat radius. "This is the key," Kai emphasized. "Human warfare isn't about having the right answer. It's about having many possible answers and choosing the best one for the situation. It's about adaptation." "But how do you train for adaptation?" Vorak asked. "Solari military doctrine emphasizes perfecting standard responses until they become instinct, which works when situations are predictable." Kai agreed. "But what happens when they're not? Yesterday, if you'd fought the gluon mites with standard Solari tactics, we would have lost," Zeth admitted. "Their enhancements were specifically designed to counter our advantages." "Exactly. So instead of relying on standard tactics, we found a new solution. That's what we're training, not specific techniques, but the ability to analyze, adapt, and innovate under pressure." The morning progressed with practical exercises. Kai paired students from different species, forcing them to combine their abilities in unexpected ways. A Kalari's speed paired with a Rex shapeshifting created a fluid combat style neither could achieve alone. Vec tool coordination principles applied to mixed groups produced surprising synergies. "Cadet Moreno," one of the human students called out during a break. "What about those of us without alien partners? How do we compete?" Kai recognized the speaker, Marcus Chen, a second-year student who'd struggled in traditional combat classes. "Show me what you've been working on," Kai said. Marcus demonstrated a series of moves that were technically correct but lacked fluidity. He was trying to fight like the instructors taught, like a Sulari or Kalari. Depending on the lesson, the result was awkward and ineffective. "Stop," Kai said. "Forget everything they've taught you about how to stand, how to move. You're human. Move like one." "I don't understand." Kai considered how to explain. "Humans didn't evolve as specialist warriors. We evolved as persistence hunters, tool users, problem solvers. Our bodies are built for endurance and adaptability, not burst power. So why are you trying to match a Sulari's striking force?" He demonstrated, flowing through a series of movements that looked nothing like standard academy forms. "See how I'm constantly shifting, never committing fully to one position? That's because humans excel at continuous adjustment. We can't match a Kalari's reflexes, but we can process multiple variables simultaneously and adjust our approach mid-action." "Like your mining frequency attack," Marcus said. Understanding dawning. "Exactly. I didn't try to match the gluon mite's strength. I found a completely different axis of attack. That's human combat, always looking for the unexpected angle." Dr. Ferris approached as the students returned to their exercises. "Impressive," she said quietly. "You're not just teaching techniques. You're teaching them to think differently." "It's what my father would have done," Kai replied. "Watching Lin Ma coordinate a mixed-species assault pattern that would have been impossible under traditional doctrine. He always said the best miners weren't the ones with the most powerful equipment, but the ones who understood the rock. And you're teaching them to understand the battlefield the way he understood asteroids." Dr. Ferris smiled. "I think he would be proud." The session continued until midday, when an unexpected visitor arrived. The doors opened to admit Commandant Thalvar, accompanied by several high-ranking officers from various species military commands. The room fell silent, students snapping to attention. "Continue your exercises," Thalvar commanded, their crystalline form moving through the room with surprising grace. "We are here to observe, not interrupt." Kai swallowed his nervousness and returned to instruction, though he was acutely aware of the observer's presence. The students, after a moment's hesitation, resumed their activities with perhaps a bit more intensity than before. "Cadet Lin Ma," Kai called out, "demonstrate the swarm-adapted flanking maneuver you developed." The Vec-tool clicked acknowledgement and gathered their mixed-species team. What followed was a display of coordinated movement that defied traditional doctrine. Instead of the Vec-tool's usual synchronized patterns, the team moved in deliberately asymmetric formations, each member's species-specific advantages creating unpredictable attack vectors. "Fascinating," one of the visiting officers, a Sulari general by his insignia, murmured. "They're using chaos as a weapon." "Controlled chaos," Kai corrected respectfully. "Each member knows their role and their teammates' capabilities. The unpredictability is only from the enemy's perspective." "And you developed this doctrine?" the general asked. "We developed it," Kai emphasized. "I provided the initial concept, but each student has contributed innovations based on their species' unique perspectives. Human thinking isn't about replacing other approaches, it's about creating frameworks for innovation." Thalvar drifted closer, their psychic presence brushing against Kai's mind. "Show us the resonance technique from yesterday." Kai hesitated. "Sir, the equipment burned out, without the bioelectric sensors." "Then demonstrate the principle without them." A test. Kai realized. They wanted to see if yesterday's success was repeatable or just a fluke. He moved to the center of the training area, gesturing for Flux to join him. "The technique relies on finding and exploiting structural harmonics," he explained. "Every material, biological or otherwise, has frequencies at which it naturally resonates. For silicon-based life forms like gluon mites or REC, these frequencies are particularly pronounced." He placed his hand on the floor, feeling for the subtle vibrations that any trained miner would recognize. "Flux, if you would create a crystalline appendage." The wreck complied, extending a limb that hardened into a diamond-like structure. Kai studied it, remembering his father's lessons about reading crystal formations in asteroids. "The resonance point is here," he said, tapping a specific spot. A sharp impact at approximately 3,700 Hertz would create micro-fractures along the natural stress lines. "Prove it," the general challenged. Kai looked at Flux, who nodded permission. Without the gloves, he couldn't generate the precise frequency, but he could demonstrate the principle. He struck the indicated point with a specific angle and rhythm, not hard enough to damage, but sufficient to create visible stress patterns in the crystalline structure. "Remarkable," Flux said, reabsorbing the damaged appendage. "You identified the weak point through observation alone." "Pattern recognition," Kai explained. "Humans might not have enhanced senses, but we're very good at seeing patterns. It's how our ancestors survived, noticing which plants were safe to eat, which animal tracks meant danger, which weather patterns preceded storms. And now you apply prehistoric survival skills to modern combat." Thalvar observed. Evolution through application rather than biology. The demonstration seemed to satisfy the observers. They remained for the rest of the session, occasionally asking questions but mostly watching as students experimented with human-inspired tactics. By the time training ended, Kai was exhausted but exhilarated. The energy in the room was unlike anything he'd experienced at the academy. Collaborative rather than competitive. Innovative rather than rigid. "Cadet Moreno," Thalvar called as students began dispersing. "Walk with us." Kai fell into step beside the commandant, very aware of the honor being accorded. The other officers formed a loose perimeter around them as they moved through the academy's corridors. "You have started something significant," Thalvar said without preamble. "Already, reports are coming in from other training sessions. Instructors are noticing increased cooperation between species, novel tactical approaches, and a general questioning of established doctrine. I hope that's not a problem, sir. Change is always problematic for institutions built on tradition, but stagnation is death, especially in warfare." They paused at an observation window overlooking the main combat arena, where traditional drills were underway. "What do you see down there?" Kai watched the cadets moving through prescribed formations. "Perfection," he said. "Every movement exactly as taught, every response precisely as drilled. And therefore, predictable." Thalvar added, "In the last major conflict, we lost 3 battles because enemy forces had studied our training methods and anticipated our responses. Your approach offers something we've been missing, unpredictability backed by purpose." "It's not my approach, sir. It's humanity's. I'm just the first one to articulate it in terms the Academy could understand. Modesty. Another human trait we could learn from." The commandant's form shifted colors, and what Kai had learned was amusement. "Tell me, what do you know of the Kepler station raid where your father died?" The question caught Kai off guard. "Only what was in the official reports. Raiders hit the mining station. Security forces responded but arrived too late. The station was deemed strategically insignificant, so no follow-up action was taken. The official reports were incomplete." Thalvar gestured to the Solari general. "General Korvax, perhaps you could elaborate?" The general's scarred features were grim. "The raiders weren't random pirates. They were scouts for a larger force testing our response times to attacks on insignificant targets. Your father and the other defenders held them off long enough for critical navigation data to be destroyed. Data that would have revealed the locations of 12 other mining colonies." Kai felt his chest tighten. He saved 12 colonies. "Potentially thousands of lives," General Korvax confirmed. "But because the intelligence was classified and the immediate target was deemed unimportant, the full significance of the defense wasn't recognized. A failure in our evaluation methods that we've been working to correct." "Why tell me this now?" Kai asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Because humanity's approach to warfare, Your father's approach has always been more sophisticated than we gave credit for, Thalvar said. He didn't just defend a mining station. He made a calculated decision to sacrifice his life for a strategic objective no one else recognized. That kind of thinking, scaled up to military doctrine, could revolutionize how we approach conflict. They continued walking, the group eventually arriving at a section of the academy Kai had never seen before. The architecture was different here, older, with walls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Strategic Planning Center, Thalvar explained, noting Kai's curiosity. Where doctrine is developed and future conflicts are modeled. You'll be spending time here, sir. Your training program has been officially sanctioned as a pilot project. You'll continue working with your current group, but we're also assigning you to a doctrine development team. Your insights on human tactical thinking need to be formally integrated into academy curriculum. It was an honor beyond anything Kai had imagined. First-year cadets didn't get assigned to doctrine development. They certainly didn't get to reshape how the galaxy's premier military academy approached combat training. I'm not qualified, he began. You're uniquely qualified. General Korvax interrupted. You understand both human innovation and alien capabilities. More importantly, you've demonstrated the ability to bridge that gap in practical terms. We need that perspective. What about my regular classes? Modified schedule, Dr. Ferris said, speaking for the first time since they'd left the training hall. You'll maintain core requirements, but with reduced course load. Your work here takes priority. Kai nodded, overwhelmed by the rapid changes. Yesterday morning he'd been nobody. Now he was being asked to help reshape military doctrine for the entire academy. One more thing, Thalvar added as they prepared to part ways. The recruitment allocations I mentioned yesterday. The human quota has been increased to 50 positions for next year, with potential for growth based on performance. We're also implementing exchange programs with Earth's military academies to better integrate human tactical thinking. 50 positions, more than triple the current allocation. Kai thought of the message he'd sent his mother, of his father's sacrifice, of all the humans who'd been told they weren't good enough to stand among the galaxy's warriors. Thank you, sir, he managed. We won't let you down. See that you don't, General Korvax said, though his tone was more paternal than threatening. The galaxy needs warriors who can think as well as fight. Your species might just teach the rest of us how to do both. As the senior officers departed, Dr. Ferris remained behind with Kai. They stood in the ancient corridor, surrounded by centuries of military tradition about to be challenged by human innovation. Scared? She asked. Terrified, Kai admitted. Yesterday I just wanted to prove humans could compete. Now you're responsible for proving we belong. No pressure. Her smile took the sting out of the words. But you won't be alone. I've been in contact with Earth's military colleges. They're sending their best tactical theorists to support the program. And your fellow cadets have already proven eager to learn. They walked back toward the main academy complex, passing groups of cadets who now looked at Kai with expressions ranging from curiosity to respect to barely concealed resentment. Change always had its opponents. There will be resistance, Dr. Ferris warned, apparently reading his thoughts. Some see human innovation as a threat to established order. Others simply refuse to believe a species without natural weapons can contribute to military doctrine. You'll need to be careful. I've been careful my whole life, Kai replied. Maybe it's time to be bold instead. That evening, Kai found himself back in Laboratory 7 with Lin Ma, working on the equipment designs Dr. Ferris had mentioned. The Vec tool's compound eyes were perfectly suited for examining multiple technical diagrams simultaneously, while Kai's human perspective caught integration possibilities that linear thinking might miss. These enhanced sensors, Lin Ma said, manipulating a holographic schematic. If we combine them with Vec tool neural processing algorithms, We could create predictive models, not just for individual opponents, but for entire battlefield scenarios. The processing power required would be enormous, Kai pointed out. Unless, what if we distributed it? Instead of one person trying to track everything, create a network where each fighter contributes data to a shared tactical picture? Collective intelligence applied to combat. Fascinating. It inverts the traditional command structure while maintaining coordination. Lin Ma's mandibles clicked excitedly. We could prototype this within days. They worked late into the night, joined periodically by other students who contributed insights from their species' perspectives. Flux suggested adaptive materials that could reshape based on tactical needs. Vorak proposed integration with Sulari battle meditation techniques. Even Marcus Chen, the struggling human student from the morning session, offered valuable input on interface design for human users. This is unprecedented, Sarah Okafor observed, reviewing their progress. We're not just creating equipment, we're building a new paradigm for multi-species combat integration. All from a teenager with modified mining gloves. Zeth added with what Kai was learning to recognize as Sulari humor. Perhaps humans are more dangerous than we thought. The most dangerous thing about humans, Kai said, thinking of his father and the sacrifice that saved 12 colonies, is that we never stop trying to find a better way, even when everyone tells us it's impossible. Especially then, Lin Ma corrected. I've been studying your history. Humans seem to perform best when the odds are against you, because that's when we have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Kai agreed. When you're already at the bottom, the only direction is up. Not anymore, Vorak said firmly. After today, no one can claim humans belong at the bottom. You've earned your place among warriors. The words carried weight coming from a Sulari, a species that valued martial prowess above all else. Kai felt something shift inside him, not just personal validation, but hope for humanity's future among the stars. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Kai activated his personal display, expecting another update from Dr. Ferris or the doctrine team. Instead, he found a video message from his mother. I'll give you some privacy, Lin Ma said, recognizing the personal nature of the communication. The others followed, leaving Kai alone in the lab. His mother's face appeared on the display, older than he remembered, marked by the hard life of a mining colony widow, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Kai, she began, her voice thick with emotion. I received your message, and then I received another message from Commandant Thalvar themselves, telling me about your father, about what really happened at Kepler Station. She paused, composing herself. All these years, I thought he died for nothing, just another casualty in a meaningless raid. But 12 colonies, Kai, thousands of lives. He made a choice, the kind of choice humans have always made, to stand when others would run, to find victory in sacrifice. And now you're carrying on that legacy, not with a weapon or a last stand, but with ideas, teaching the galaxy that human strength isn't in our muscles, but in our minds, our hearts, our refusal to accept limitations. She smiled then, the expression transforming her careworn features. Your father would be so proud. I'm so proud. Show them what humans are truly capable of. My son, show them that we belong among the stars not as subjects or observers, but as equals, as warriors in our own right. The message ended, leaving Kai alone with his thoughts and the weight of expectation. Outside the laboratory windows, the moons of Xylaris Prime continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the changes happening below, but change was coming, whether the galaxy was ready or not. Human innovation had found its voice. And through that voice, humanity would claim its place among the warriors of the stars, not through strength or natural weapons, but through the most human quality of all, the ability to look at the impossible and ask, What if? Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new resistance, new opportunities to prove that physical strength was just one form of power. But tonight, Kai Moreno allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He'd honored his father's memory, earned the respect of alien warriors, and taken the first step toward redefining humanity's role in the galaxy. It was, he thought, a good beginning. The weeks that followed transformed the Academy in ways both subtle and profound. Kai's training sessions grew from 50 participants to over 200, requiring multiple instructors and larger venues. The Doctrine Development Team formally incorporated human tactical thinking into curriculum planning. Exchange students from Earth arrived, bringing fresh perspectives and proving that Kai wasn't an anomaly but a representative of humanity's hidden potential. There was resistance. Of course, some instructors resented the challenge to traditional methods. Several senior cadets from warrior species felt threatened by humans suddenly excelling in combat scenarios. There were confrontations, some verbal, others more physical. But each challenge only proved the effectiveness of human adaptability. The term's final evaluation approached with unprecedented anticipation. Mixed species teams had become the norm rather than the exception. Combat scenarios now included unconventional victory conditions that rewarded innovation over pure force. The Academy's fundamental approach to warfare was evolving, and humanity stood at the center of that evolution. On the morning of the final evaluation, Kai stood once again on the observation deck where this journey had begun. But now he wasn't alone. His squad, the same aliens who had once dismissed him, now his closest allies, stood with him. They wore matching insignia that Lin Ma had designed, a human hand gripping a star, surrounded by symbols representing each species in their group. Unity through diversity, strength through innovation. "Ready for this?" Sarah Okafor asked, joining them at the viewport. "As ready as anyone can be for reshaping military history," Kai replied. "You? I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it until you showed us the way." She gestured to the gathering crowds below. "Look at them. Humans and aliens training together, learning from each other, creating something entirely new. 6 months ago, this was impossible." "Nothing's impossible," Flux observed, their form shifting to better view the arena. "That's what humans taught us. There are only problems we haven't solved yet." "Speaking of problems," Vorak rumbled, "incoming." Lieutenant Azu approached, his scarred features unreadable. The group tensed, old habits of deference to authority warring with their new confidence. But Azu surprised them by offering something unprecedented, a Sulari warrior's salute to equals. "Cadets," he said formally. "The Academy Command has asked me to inform you that today's evaluation will be observed by representatives from the Galactic Council's Military Committee. Your performance will influence not just recruitment allocations, but fundamental policy regarding military integration. No pressure?" Despite his words, there was something like pride in his voice. Kai realized that Arzu, the instructor who had initially opposed his methods, had become one of their strongest advocates. "We won't let you down, sir," Kai said. "You already haven't," Arzu replied. "You've proven that strength comes in many forms. Now prove it to the galaxy." As they made their way to the arena, Kai thought about how far they'd all come. Not just him, but every human who'd been told they weren't good enough. Every alien who'd learned to see beyond physical prowess. Every instructor who'd questioned doctrine they'd taught for decades. Change was never easy. It came with sacrifice, resistance, and moments of doubt. But it also came with possibility, the chance to build something better than what came before. The arena was packed beyond capacity, with overflow crowds watching on holographic displays throughout the Academy. The evaluation itself would test everything they'd learned: combat skills, tactical innovation, species integration, and the ability to find victory through unconventional means. As Kai took his position with his squad, He touched the fading marks on his palms where the modified gloves had burned. Scars of innovation, Dr. Ferris had called them. Proof that pushing boundaries came with a price, but a price worth paying. Whatever happens, Linmar said quietly, we've already won. We've proven that diversity is strength, that innovation beats tradition, that humans belong among the galaxy's warriors. No, Kai corrected gently. We've proven that we all belong together, that the galaxy's greatest strength isn't any one species, but all of us working as one. The simulation began, throwing challenges at them that would have been insurmountable under traditional doctrine, but they weren't fighting traditionally. They were fighting with human innovation, Solari strength, Vectool coordination, Rec adaptability, and dozen other species' unique advantages all working in harmony. They fought with the legacy of a miner who'd died saving colonies he'd never see. They fought with the dreams of humans who'd been told they were too weak to matter. They fought with the courage of aliens willing to challenge everything they'd been taught. Most of all, they fought together. And in that unity, forged through innovation and tempered by mutual respect, they found victory. Not just in the evaluation, but in something far more important, proof that the galaxy's future lay not in the dominance of any one species, but in the combined strength of all. As the simulation ended and the crowds erupted in amazement at what they'd witnessed, Kai looked at his squad mates, his friends, and knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not by becoming like other species, but by showing them what they could become together. The human teenager who'd bested alien cadets had become something more, a bridge between worlds, a catalyst for change, and living proof that true strength wasn't measured in muscle or natural weapons, but in the courage to challenge the impossible and the wisdom to do it together. His father would have been proud. And somewhere among the stars, humanity's future burned a little brighter, no longer dimmed by doubt, but blazing with the promise of what they could achieve when given the chance to show their true strength, the power of human innovation unleashed upon the universe.